Hello, this is the cartoon version of the Teacher Philosophy, here with a short message on a Kant myth that's better to avoid, although it's fairly minor misunderstanding and it's not likely to do you much harm. And why am I appearing in cartoon mode? Honestly, I mostly just felt like it. It's the myth that Kant gives us several categorical imperatives. It's a very easy misunderstanding to make, in fact. And it's related, in fact, to the misunderstanding that there are four versions of the categorical imperative. If you study the text, I believe in the final section of the Groundwork for Metaphysics of Morals, you'll find that what we call the kingdom of ends formulation is actually understood by Kant himself to be just a different way of phrasing the third version of the categorical imperative. The third and fourth are really the same. The kingdom of ends is just a different way of phrasing the third version of the categorical imperative. Act as if you're making act as if your justifications for your decisions are in future going to be laws that all rational beings must follow. This, in Kant's understanding, is really the same way as acting so as to build up the kingdom of ends. So they're the same version of the categorical imperative, even though they don't quite seem that way to most of us, because we don't naturally think in these terms, kingdom of ends and the maxim for your action and laws all rational beings will have to follow. The maxim for your action being the justification for it. And the first version of the categorical imperative is presented in this way. Kant says, here's the myth directly addressed, there is but one categorical imperative. And this one categorical imperative is given in its first version as act in such a way that the maxim for your action could be used universally. Act in such a way that you could wish that the maxim for your action would be universally used by all rational beings. Maxim is just the word here employed for the justification for your action, the reason you make the decision you make. Act in such a way that the maxim, the justification, the reason for your action could be universally applied. Act in such a way that you can wish that everyone would justify their actions, would act on the same motivations, act with the same intentions as you are acting. Act in such a way that that makes sense. Act in such a way that that works. This is the first version of the categorical imperative, but there's only one categorical imperative. Kant thinks that the second version of the categorical imperative treat human beings as ends in themselves, or you may find him phrasing it this way, treat rational beings as ends in themselves and not merely as means. He thinks this version of the categorical imperative actually gives us all the same results, all the same decisions made in just the same way as the first version. But we need different versions of the categorical imperative to, well, I think to understand the nature of the requirements of moral law a little more clearly. Honestly, I think it's also because our minds don't all work in exactly the same way at peak efficiency with version 1, version 3, and if you want to call it this, version 3 subsection B or something, the kingdom of ends formulation. For me, I find that the principle always treat human beings as ends in themselves, not merely as means to an end, usually provides easily understood practical advice, but sometimes it doesn't tell you exactly how to make some tricky decision, and the act in such a way that the principle justifying your action could be universally applied may be helpful in narrowing down some other questions. If you check the text, I think it's again in the I think it's in the final section of the Groundwork for Metaphysics of Morals, you will find that Kant tells us that these different formulations of the categorical imperative are meant to motivate us to moral behavior in different ways, so as to we'll cover more ground, help us be moral more consistently. The kingdom of ends formulation, the ends in themselves formulation, the act so that your maxim could be universally applied formulation. These are these get at different these have different terms linguistically, and they get at different concepts in our heads and provide several different ways of motivating us to moral behavior, reminding us of what counts as moral behavior and so on. But there's only one categorical imperative. He thinks they not only lead to the same results, but they actually mean the same thing. Each one entails the other and vice versa, and they are all the same test to make sure actions are consistent with moral law, but they're given in 3 different versions.